I'll reconvene the meeting. First thing is we have to look at the minutes and say they're okay. I take it nobody's looked at them. So why don't I circulate these? Got a couple of copies. Look at. I think there's, I looked at them, mostly it's fine, except there's some stars or some missing things we need to fill in. Yeah.
Yeah, I did look at them. Sorry.
So,
Do you have, who doesn't have, just one set?
all one set. I only have 3 copies, so,
I
Good, I'll just
tried to
look
get
through
them
mine.
online, don't worry.
okay.
Make it. Here we go.
The
look
minutes
on
for
it.
December.
No,
Oh, I'm
no,
fine.
Did you take care of the Astus?
Somebody have a cell phone number here? A cell phone?
I do have this.
Brian Walker's phone number?
Yes, I can get it out.
(383)
Oh, that was the one I missed. Okay. Why don't I not even look at them then, because I'm not gonna actually,
Okay, then somebody else.
yeah. Matthew, you wanna look at the minutes
0904.
Is
of
everybody
the
a
last meeting?
voting member tonight?
The voting members tonight will be, well, the permanent members are Joan, Frank,
May.
and Gino. That's 3. And the 2 alternates,
And you're
we take turns. You're
permanent.
you're permanent?
Oh,
Okay,
you
great.
are?
Yeah.
Oh, good. 4, so there's 4, and we need an alternate. And the only alternate, we have a choice of Martha and Gino, and
No, I'm a permanent member.
since Martha was,
Don't forget me.
Don't forget.
and Dave, but since Martha was present at the last meeting
Yeah.
and participated, I think she should.
Yeah, I'll just abstain. Yeah, that's strange, changing those locks like that. Now waiting for the new selectman to come in and make the decision. Wonder how that happened. Interesting.
Thanks.
Well, Ella's gone for the week. That may have had something to do with it. They were afraid of people getting to Ella's.
So
Or
I'll
it could
call
just be
the
Jane,
order,
maybe,
we're
because he had
reviewing
a
the minutes.
snowstorm. He couldn't do what he was promised to do.
Are there any corrections or holes in the minutes we have to fill in?
Looks right to me. Quick.
No missing
I
stars
looked
right
at them
there?
online.
Well, I don't know what the answer to those stars are.
Okay, which stars are they?
Down here.
Should run the right of way for the utilities on Tempe Road. I think it's North Hampshire Ridge Road.
Okay. You want to make corrections on here?
Any way you want.
Okay, any other changes?
And everything's,
Great. All in favor of accepting the minutes with that one change? Aye.
All right.
fine.
Who we need second?
Oh, what is there?
Okay. This is the continuation of deliberations on Robert Rupper's request for a variance. Everybody should have seen the new survey that was presented. Has everybody seen it? Or just, I think the upshot is that the proposed garage is entirely within the proposed setback, the prescribed setback, instead of 15 feet as we thought.
I don't think that's what we thought.
The initial application said 15 feet into the setback.
Oh, is that what it said in the
Yeah.
setback 15?
That was the reason for the variance.
Um, I
Can
mean,
we,
we went through the criteria for variance. We were generally supportive of each of those criteria. There were a number of, couple of comments, many of which are in the minutes. Dave pointed out that given the structure, where we thought the garage was going to be, it would not be contrary to public interest because it would not be seen from the road. That may or may not be the same.
Maybe be better just to go back and re-summarize our findings of fact.
Well, why don't let me try to summarize what I think the background is at least,
Okay.
so we get this right at least. This is a 1.4 acre parcel, 61,000 square feet. Because it's of its rectangular shape, which is roughly 400 by 150, you know, the setback area, and you can see that in the new survey, is approximately 66% of the parcel. I got that by multiplying 400 plus 150, which are the two lot lines, approximately, times 25, and then also times 50. But it's also, I think, noteworthy to point out that even within the remaining 20,000 square foot of the parcel, the existing structure has a relatively small footprint of only about 6% of the buildable, of the area within the prescribed setback, and 2% of the entire lot. The variance was for a request to build a 25 by 24 foot two-car garage with a loft. I measured the building height to be about 22 feet based on the scale drawings we were provided. And the initial application had it being, and the proposal is, of course, to put the garage into the sloping terrain, into the road, and Mr. Rubel indicates it's difficult to build downslope, or more expensive to build downslope, given the sharp drop-off. The initial variance application was that about one half the garage would intrude about 15 feet into the 50-foot setback. The new survey shows it, well, it's not, it's where the new garage is not on the new survey, but I think all, or substantially all of the garage where it was proposed to be located would be within the setback. And the proposed garage, of course, is to be built into the hillside. The variance application also indicated that the roof of the garage would be below the finished grade of North Hampshire Ridge Road. And there were some drawings that were given last meeting, which I'll pass around just to remind people of that. Looking at the drawing, I suspect this has the length of the garage being 18 feet if I measure this, if I looked at the drawing, so I think it's a little bit off, and I'm not sure whether that means North Hampshire Ridge Road, the peak of the garage will be over the finished grade of North Hampshire Ridge Road, or North Hampshire Ridge Road is actually a little bit higher than they show. So there's some uncertainty there. Those were, I think, that's my background summary of this case. And then we had a discussion on each of the criteria. The first was whether or not this would be contrary to public interest. We had quite a bit of discussion on that, but I think my recollection is we generally felt that it would not be contrary to public interest, in part because it would not change the visual character of the neighborhood. Again, as we understood it at the time. Did anybody want to discuss further about that criteria?
That's all the way it was, right, when you thought it was 15%.
What we talked about, to my recollection, is that it was going to be cut into the hillside.
Yes.
So it was going to be low.
Yes.
We still had, in this, 28 feet, 27 feet, which is wooded along there. And what was the purpose of the 50-foot setback? Certainly nothing other than in this case, in the neighborhood case, visual, rural situation. If you have if you had the garage which was down, the road is higher, you've got trees as a buffer about 25 feet, and then it didn't seem that the public purpose of that ordinance, which was to preserve that rural character, would be violated. I think that is a synopsis of what we,
That's when you thought there was only 15 feet inside the setback. Now 60% of the building's inside the setback, right?
100%.
100%
Well, we
of
don't
the
know
building?
where he wants to put it now, that's the
yeah,
question.
maybe he wants to move it closer to the house, but right now, it's apparent that the house almost touches the 50-foot setback.
Wow.
So anything you put between the house and the road is gonna be
Entirely in the
within
setback.
Entirely,
If you
yeah.
put it right next to the house, you'd still have 25 feet or 26 feet between the garage and the road.
It'd still be
It's a
25
straight
feet
line, but
setback,
of
yeah.
course,
Depending on the orientation, because, you know, if the original plan had the garage canted to the house, to the road, so that you were looking at the diagonal of the house, of the garage, which, you know, is not 24 feet, but probably closer to, I don't remember my square roots anymore, but I'm going to guess in the 40-foot range, 45-foot range. But go
While
ahead.
it's more into the setback, there is still the larger wooded areas, just that there is a right-of-way that's off the pavement. So
For
the
the
setback is
road.
from the road, right, setback from the pavement of the road. So the setback starts at the right-of-way, not at the pavement, which was, I think,
yes, that-
so from a visual point of view, I think we still are where we were. There's a wooded area
quite
between,
a sizable
wooded
wooded
area.
area between the road, which is higher, and the garage.
Right. And we can always condition our approval that that remain wooded to the degree that's possible.
The pavement, the road is 20, what was it, 29, something like that when I measured it. Was it 50? So if you're going from the hot top to the edge of the right-of-way, it's about 10 feet, as I remember it to
I
be.
think it's probably, you can look at it on the map that we provide, the survey. It's, I think it's closer to 20 feet.
On either side, so it's
No,
10 feet.
On the side, from the edge of the traveled way to the lot line.
I think it's 20 feet, pretty close.
Here, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think we're given that information.
it sits there.
Electronics.
Do you want me to help you out at all?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, see, this is, we know this is 50 feet right here.
Right.
yeah.
If that's 50 feet, and then the distance from the traveled way to the lot line looks to be somewhere between 10 and 15 feet, that's
Yeah,
it.
I would say.
What have the abutters said?
If you remember, well, that, I think it's.
I wasn't here for that, so.
They were encouraging, they
They
were
were
supporting.
Said It's not a problem for them.
The other thing is, if you drive up that road, a lot of the houses are very visible from the road. It's not as though
Not the
the houses
entrance.
are tucked deep into the woods, but as you drive up, they're all, especially as you go up further, they're all right there. There are some tucked away, but from a visual point of view, it's really not changing the character, and the other houses are very visible
The problem you have, though,
Even if it weren't down low and
in the
a lot
woods.
of woods, it wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
isn't there a problem, though, with, like, on Green Hill Road, that the hoops you went through over that woman just, when Helen got shot down on Green Hill Road years ago,
She did.
for being like a
Yeah.
foot and a half
Yeah.
into the setback, and when you make
But is
it,
precedence part of this?
No.
no, it isn't,
Okay.
but it does,
Then it doesn't matter.
Well,
it
I
can
think
matter.
the issue is how is that different, or how either case is different. In this case, I think that, you know, you were looking at a street with a very well-defined set of setbacks for the fronts of the houses, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 in a row, and
yeah.
she was going to intrude on that. It also was the setback into the front of the road, the front door of the front of the house, the front of
Right.
the road. Here, this is
The side.
arguably the side of the house into a hillside, much less visible. So I think there are a number of differences there.
I just bring it up for
Yeah, so I
discussion,
think
that's all.
that's-
It's
that's fair.
I saw Helen didn't get hers, and then that other lady did
Well,
years
and
later.
then there's the question about, unique features of this particular situation as opposed to others, and this is, I don't know what hers was like, but my guess is it wasn't.
Couldn't even see it from
particularly
the road. It was behind some trees, and
No, her front door.
going back to when the other little old lady had to buy the little sports car to fit in the garage, because she
This
couldn't
is
make the
on the
grade. Yeah, after her. Then
Yeah.
her and then the lady after her had
But
the same
they
problem.
wanted to build the garage closer to the street.
The lady after her, yeah, right? It's been years, I don't know, but
Yeah, I drove by it the other day, but it was, the whole, visually, you were plunk right in front of you, smack down.
Yeah.
And this is not going to be a
well, I
smack
won't be
dab.
voting on it anyway, I just brought it up for discussion, that's all.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And if you can't set precedent doing it, then
No,
it's probably not a problem.
this lot's unique, and we've
Yeah.
already said
Yeah, it's not
it's
a matter of
unique.
question.
The long frontage, there, as Frank said, the
He's
percent
got-
that's really
because of
in the
Where
setback.
this lot is placed in relation to other lots in the neighborhood, he's on the corner of the road, so that gives him a 50-foot setback, practically his whole lot.
Yeah.
Where everybody else has got, 50 foot in the
Yeah,
front, because they're
right.
square to the road, and then they've got 25 feet.
What
to
is
the
this, on
side.
North Hampshire Ridge?
If he had
Yeah.
25 feet to the side,
But
he
he
wouldn't have a
does,
question.
he does have 25 feet to the side. On both sides, he has 25 feet that he could use. That's, the problem I'm having with this is I don't see his setbacks being hardship, because every other house has a detached, some of the houses, not all, have detached garages to the left or to the right. And he's got room, he chooses not to, he'd prefer to have it there. Aesthetically, it might be nicer where he wants it, but he's got the room to put it elsewhere. And I think that's what bothers me in this whole.
Typically with building in a setback, from what I've seen, the only two instances, Joan and Paul Polevniak putting up a little building that was on supports. If it was on cinder blocks, it was considered, yeah, you could be inside the setback from your neighbor's property. These are radical departures. Now, again, I'm just throwing it out there because that was, and at the tennis courts one time, they wanted to put up a building on cinder blocks that was into the setback. It was allowed because it was on cinder blocks. I'm just saying it because that's how it's been done.
What we're saying,
Each one is unique, from what I've read.
what we're
each
saying
one
is that it
unique.
doesn't really matter what happened
Yeah,
there,
that's what I'm
happened
saying.
there, what-
It-
But what she just said makes some sense. If you're doing it because it fits into what you think the architectural pattern is, in other words, if there's some other way to do it.
Well, we talked about putting the garage to the left of the house, and it's quite steep there, and.
Not where the
difficult.
driveway is.
Plus, where the driveway is.
To the left, oh, to the left, downhill side of the driveway.
Yeah.
Right,
But there's no more, when you look at the gradients, there's no more gradients down than there are gradients up. One, he's taking dirt out, one, he's putting dirt
And the
in.
other thing we discussed, and we can discuss.
But there's
it
a view
again.
there.
The other thing we discussed, and we can certainly discuss it again, is that he needs to be able to drive by in order to get to his septic in the back. So he can't block. Excuse me.
As long as,
In looking at the manual, since I'm new to this, going through these 5 points that you got to consider, number 3, substantial justice is done. What it says is, any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. So I don't see any gain to the general public here by,
Yeah, I think
You know.
we're largely talking about fifth prong. I don't,
and the spirit of the ordinance.
yeah.
Spirit of the ordinance.
I think, well, let me summarize. I think the only thing we really have at issue here is the fifth criteria, whether or not there's hardship. Was anybody trying to quickly go through that, or do we all agree that that's the case?
That we had covered 1 through 4 the last time.
Okay. So,
We don't have the gradients on this lot, Dave.
we do.
You do have.
And also there's the well there, and he has to respect the well radius too. And this variance is not addressing that, so that also further limits where he can put the garage.
But are you saying that he's going to be allowed to put the garage within the total setback? Because that just seems like, why bother having setbacks?
Well, we discussed why the setback is there.
It's
The
density.
setback isn't there just because it's ironclad. The setback is there to accomplish something. In this case, obviously, the only thing it could be there to accomplish is to preserve the character of the neighborhood. So the question then would be, does this disturb the character of the neighborhood? And I thought we kind of came to an agreement the last time that it doesn't disturb the character of the neighborhood. Because there's absolutely no other reason to have a 50-foot setback in that area.
It's controlling density.
Yeah.
And I
I
think,
just,
I was answering, I probably agree with
plain devil's advocate here, just to get it all out in
you.
paper.
You have to do that.
My,
You can't just be a
It's
rubber
gonna come
stamp.
back to bite if we don't.
I guess my only concern is now that it's potentially 50 feet into the setback, do we want to, the only thing I thought of, the only thing that changed in my mind, or I thought about, was would we want to limit how much into the setback the garage could be built? Limited to 25 feet or 30 feet. So there's still a, 30 or,
What does that accomplish, though?
it keeps it away from the traveled
Meaning
road. It makes it less visible. The other thing I thought of is we could require that the, maybe we do also, is to require that the building, stipulate that the building cannot be either higher than 22 feet or can't be higher than the finished grade of, or more than, let's say, 2 or 3 feet over the finished grade of North Hampshire Ridge.
And perhaps put something about shrubbery
Yes.
shielding the view.
Well, as Joan said, you could make it a condition that the slope remain wooded
Yeah.
for the purpose of screening the garage.
Vegetated.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the question is whether or not anything's changed in our evaluation of literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship.
It's the same.
One of the things it says under that, if you go to the manual, is can relief, this is under the hardship clause, can relief be granted to the property without frustrating the purpose of the ordinance?
And again, I
Say
think,
that is yes. If the purpose of the ordinance is to maintain the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
and in my mind in particular, density.
Yeah.
Um, Well, are we, go ahead, Joan.
There was only one other point I thought we should get in the minutes at some point in time. Doesn't have to be now, but the declaration covenants and restrictions at North Hampshire Ridge also have a 50-foot setback from the road, and whatever actions we take do not address that or relieve the applicant of responsibility to address his covenants at North Hampshire Ridge.
Well, I wonder about that because it's in
Weird.
it's in the deed.
It's-
And it's also, there was something else about a 10-foot easement, that we can't tell somebody they can build on an easement because they don't own the land. Oh, wait a minute, let me say, I don't feel that, if I have an easement with Sackle Valley, I can't go off and do what I want. I have an easement with them. These people have an easement that's still on the books. Now, they said that it isn't relevant, it faded 20 years ago, but it's still in the deed.
But it's up to them to enforce.
That's what I'm
it.
saying. It's
Right, but
It's
not-
not up to the ZBA.
It's not up to us, but can we turn around and say, oh, sure, you can build on something, we saw a deed that says you can't?
No.
No.
We're not
Yes,
saying they
they
can
can.
build,
They can.
we're only saying this zoning ordinance, we give them a variance for the requirement of the zoning ordinance. They still
That
have to
doesn't let them
comply
out of the
with all
easement.
other
Restrictions.
restrictions, whatever septic requirements there might be, it has to be built to code. It
The
has-
well radius.
You know, well radius, I dealt with.
So what are their neighbors then who also has this restriction, go back and sue them if they wanted to because they don't meet the covenant? That's
Well,
their business.
whoever
That could
has-
always
It's not our
Absolutely,
business.
yeah.
Whoever has standing to
It's
do
not
that.
ours,
yes, not
okay.
ours.
But I think
Not our
our
business.
minutes and our decisions should state that.
Yes.
Yes.
That we are not addressing
Exactly.
any covenants
And
or any other
if
requirements.
we're
that come
talking
in
about
this.
the utility easement per the deed, this garage is not proposed to be built on that easement in any event. So
Okay.
that shouldn't be a
Yeah.
problem.
It's close, but it's
No,
not.
it's not on.
Well, the easement is a 10-foot easement
Yeah.
from your
Yeah.
property line,
Yeah.
so.
And the corner of the house is 50 feet
Yeah.
from the right of way. So you subtract 10 from that, you got 40, and the drawing is 39. It wasn't intentional, but it worked out that way.
So,
The 15 is
1 feet
24.
11 inches.
so, I mean, should we at least say that they can't build into the 10-foot easement?
I think that's another condition that could be appropriate.
So I think my sense is we're inclined to say yes, but we may have some conditions.
I think
And we have to understand why we want them and whether or not it really is
staying.
rational and supported.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Staying, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. Staying with the idea of the easement is not our, well, not our situation.
With the covenants.
Right.
Yeah,
But
but
these
the
are-
covenants are not our situation.
Okay.
Then why don't we just recognize those two things?
Yeah.
And make it clear that there is an easement, which under the deed can't be built upon, and there's a covenant that has to
That
be
you signed
satisfied,
on to,
which is
yeah.
also 50.
I think technically they probably could build on the easement, it's just that somebody would come along and put property, underground lot wires or something there, and they'd have to move the house.
Project.
Yeah.
It can only happen
So
in
they're doing
Jackson.
it, some risk.
Because someone may buy the house next door,
As
Yeah.
Joan said, we should recognize that they're there, let's say that
Yeah.
it's there, and get it.
That's
on
a
the
safe
minutes, get
way
it
to
in
do
the
it.
decision.
Board's not addressing that and does not
And
relieve.
you may find out that those
any manner.
covenants are
Probably
no longer
integrated.
effective anyhow, depending on how long they've been there, and whether anybody
Well,
knew.
they aren't, they expired, but that's not your issue.
No,
It's not
you're
our
right,
issue.
That's not our
That's
issue.
not our issue.
But they did
Yeah,
expire, so I'm not worried about it.
They usually expire, because nobody ever renews them.
They expired in 98, or 2008.
So would anybody argue for any restrictions or conditions?
Other than what you talked about already.
I've mentioned some things, but not,
Summarize, I believe there should be some sort of condition about minimizing the visual impact, remaining wooded or planting. I think there was a proposal for a height condition so that the visual impact, again, is minimized. And I think we need to flesh out exactly what that
Are we good?
condition would be.
Sorry, go ahead.
And Frank, you proposed something about moving it closer to the house as a condition, that to be not more than so many feet into the
Well,
setback?
I thought when I first saw the 50-foot setback, one thing I thought of was, well, maybe we can go ahead, but say the amount of the intrusion into the setback can be no more than X, be it 25 feet, 35 feet, 40 feet, rather than say you can build it anywhere in the setback. I initially thought of 25 feet because if this were not a traveled way, he'd still have a 25-foot setback from the property line. So that, and one of the reasons why we think this is unique is because of the 50-foot setback along the
On the side.
whole side of the house. If
Right.
it were a more normal property,
Yeah, 20.
you'd have
25
25
feet.
setback, then you'd still have, and I think there'd be less of an argument for uniqueness at that point.
I think that sounds very rational and very, it meets a lot of needs.
But I also recognize that this is an unusual property and maybe 25 feet. Well, 25 feet, if the garage were exactly parallel to the road, could, in theory, I think would meet their, might be able to be built. Maybe we give him a little bit more than 25 feet so we can count it the way he wants to. But
Yeah, and you've also got you've got the benefit of it being down low.
Yes.
Built into the slope, and you can put a condition on that it can't be any more than either so high or, 2 feet above the
yeah,
road grade or something of that sort.
yeah, I in a sense, don't really care how high it is. It's just that it not be that visible from the road. So maybe 2 feet would do it. We're told that it's actually going to be below the grade. I suspect that the drawings don't seem to quite match up. I'd be,
What's the pitch on the roof in the garage, do you know?
yeah, it's 7 and 12, I think. It's in the drawings. That are someplace.
Because the original drawing was not the scale to what we're actually doing, because we changed the pitch. There isn't gonna be a lot in the garage.
Oh, there isn't?
What's changed?
Oh.
Well, maybe we should.
I don't think that was in the original one either. There was no intention that we have a loft up there, it would just be a flat. I think the drawing that we sent was a convenience of a rough design that Robbie had written on it, that would be a little different.
Robbie White?
It doesn't matter.
I think it's a 7 pitch, I think the drawing might have been a 12, that you saw originally.
Yeah, actually, the drawing's 12-12, but the next to side, next to it,
Cross that
it's
out,
crossed, that
that's
made
7-12.
7-12.
Right.
So it must be-
That's 5 feet
Yeah,
less.
it's lower.
Oh, 5 feet less.
Right.
Okay, so,
It might actually work.
That's what I was looking at, I was wondering.
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And that looks like 12-12, but.
Yeah,
It is, yeah,
it was 12-7.
yeah.
Well, let me ask Robert how you feel about us placing a condition that, say that the ridge of the house, ridge of the garage can't be any higher than 2 feet over the road grade. Do you think that's an issue?
No, I don't think that's an issue at all.
And if they
That-
went for something about a 20-foot, 5-foot setback, is that gonna limit you too much?
Yeah,
That will limit you too much.
yeah.
I don't
Just
think,
being honest, yeah,
Yeah,
it would.
okay.
It would, because that would force it to be directly beside the house. You'd have
Say-
to go
and-
touch
and-
the corner of the house in that area, you know.
So do you want to actually build this all the way up to your lot line then? 50 feet?
No, it would be 40.
40.
The way that it is, the way this drawing is, it's 15 feet from the house and the garage is 24 feet wide, which would put it 39 feet. Because that corner of the house is right on the 50-foot setback. So
Why does it need to be 15 feet from the house?
it doesn't need to be that much, but there's a propane tank there and a generator there.
So if they made
I'd
it,
rather
I'd like to be able to walk by it.
well, if they said 30 feet, we need 20 feet to your lot line, could you deal with the propane tank and the generator?
Possibly.
You know, I think being in the setback, it's almost like being almost pregnant. It really doesn't matter. Once you're there, you're there.
No,
Well,
I
I don't think, I think you're carving it so thin that, you know, I mean, if you're gonna if you're looking to find a way to do it, I mean,
What you try to do is cover up in
I mean,
in
lowering the
here.
height for visibility is a good idea, trees planting is a good idea, but you're already, the whole place is in a setback anyway. So, I mean, cutting them back there is like saying, okay, we're gonna,
And it's assuming he's already 10, he has to honor the 10-foot easement.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't go that far, but, because the tree, is that a view area where if you would, no, so it wouldn't block a view.
It's not possible.
So if he just plants and does, lowers the pitch because of the difference, I mean, you were okay with the performance, was a 12-12, right?
Yeah, see, the pavement, I think, as you said, the actual property line is like 12 to 15 feet from the pavement. That's the unexpected thing that happened when we got the survey done. So, you know, you take that and then the 10-foot utility easement. The way this is sitting, it's actually 27 feet from the pavement.
Well, it's that actually, it was not as unexpected. I mean, we've actually seen that quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, to me,
It's becoming,
Everybody
Yeah.
attempts to measure setbacks from the edge of the pavement.
yeah,
and that's often not the case.
Right.
Well, do we, I mean, I don't want to push people, but it sounds like we might have a consensus of, placing a limit on the ridge line vis-à-vis the finished grade. I suggest, I think 2 feet. The ridge can't be any higher than 2 feet above road grade. And Joan suggested plantings, some maybe deciduous plantings.
And maybe a neutral color roofing material. Let's not do that bright blue. metal roofing.
Purple, purple white stripes.
Oh, darn.
What's the color of the roof of the house?
Brown.
I'm sure you'd match it.
Yeah.
And then
But
27,
if we're going, this is a visual
Yeah.
impact thing, then this is a unique lot, and we are minimizing the visual impact.
Brown or dark green.
Neutral color,
Oh, sure.
neutral, nature colored roofing
Okay.
material.
That'd be enough, right?
How do people feel?
also, you've just said it as from the hot top, just, you can figure it out. But 27 feet back in, I mean, you've got the edge of the hot top, which is still part of the road, you've got the 10-foot easement. So you're up around 25 feet, 27 feet in from the hot top. So you can work the numbers back the other way, but that's what you're working with.
Right? I'd leave it just to let the easement control it and not do any more. I mean, I kind of agree with Gina.
Yeah, and you'll put something in there about the fact that we know there is some codicils on the
The
land.
closer he gets to the road, the more difficult he's going to build, be able to build as well.
Okay, but you're still saying the same thing, that he can only go up as far as the easement.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
Yeah.
but to put that in some verbiage is all I'm asking for. Just so it's very
That's
clear that you can't build on the easement, just to
you're
make
all
it
there,
clear
right?
and understood.
So, why don't, let me
So,
repeat
yeah.
that.
And I think the way for us to handle that is to make it the maximum into the setback. It's
40
so
feet.
aggressive what you can do with the easement.
Because you've already got that number, right, 39 feet.
So I think the conditions we're thinking of applying are, number one, you can go in the setback no more than 40 feet.
39, I think they're
You
saying.
need a 39, right?
Make it 40.
He's generous.
That the ridge can be no more than 2 feet over the finished grade of North Hampshire Ridge Road, and that there'll be deciduous plantings.
Deciduous plantings, or do you mean?
Yeah, evergreens.
You know,
Evergreens.
Not deciduous.
general, all you gotta just,
Deciduous, so
Yeah,
means the
that's
leaves fall
deciduous
off.
means the leaves
Yeah.
fall off.
Okay,
Yeah,
I don't-
maple
the other
trees
kind.
are
What are the other
deciduous.
yeah, you want,
Conservation Commission. come on.
Yeah,
get
deciduous.
Dee Dee over here.
So you want evergreens,
Evergreens.
Evergreens,
conifers,
as opposed to deciduous.
conifers.
Azaleas.
Just leave it alone for a couple of days, they'll
Azaleas,
grow.
rhododendrons,
It could be,
Throw some
holly.
acorns
Doesn't have
out
to be
there.
holly.
And then, and,
What
and the fourth, and the
Roofing color.
and the neutral roofing color, and just leave it neutral, and I think the intent is clear.
And that you have no interest in the fact that it's already on deeded land, you know, there's a codicil there in the property. Because
Well,
that-
we.
That's a statement.
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Recognize in
just
our
make a
minutes
statement.
that
Yeah.
Yeah.
put in the, you know, because if it's in there, then,
Recognize that there's a covenant.
Yeah.
It's not a condition, it's
It's
just
gotta work.
Yeah. we know, so.
CYA.
Exactly.
So, that's my contribution.
Is everybody comfortable with those conditions?
I think they're marvelous, and I'm voting.
Okay. Then perhaps I could have a motion just to clear up the last prong that we find that the,
By the way, did you make a motion in the last meeting minutes? I don't remember you saying it.
granting
Did they approve them? Okay.
a variance would, that we find that liberal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. That we find that that is the case here.
So moved.
That's,
Okay. And then could I have a motion that we grant a variance subject to the conditions I cited?
So
Which
moved.
again were 2 feet ridge line, 10-foot, 40-foot incursion of the setback, plantings, and neutral roof color.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Done.
Let's see.
It's not adjourned yet. Get a motion.
I'm in receipt of another variance application that I'll have posted soon on the town website. It is for a property,
6 Spring Street. Does anyone know where Spring Street is?
yeah. This is, I think, a relatively small property, 100 foot by 100 foot. It's also
So we need Malone
coincidentally
Road, isn't
on a corner, so the setback is very intrusive. And the fellow wishes to square out his building and build into the setback. So many of the same issues, but I think it may, well, I don't want to prejudge.
We have to find Spring Street and understand
Yeah.
characteristics of that lot.
Yeah.
I think it's
exactly.
down off Malone
Yeah.
Road somewhere.
Google Earth.
So that's a long way of saying that there will be a meeting next month at a regular time, which is the third Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
In the usual location.
Well, actually, this
This
is
is
kind of
lovely.
It's actually nice.
Which is great.
Do we,
Well, you've got somebody on the committee here.
I will not be here next meeting, so I can arrange for the building to be open if you
Even
want
if
to
you
use
don't know
it.
the date right now, where you
I'm
going?
going for the month of April, so
Oh.
that might be
Oh,
key.
I'm so sorry.
I can get that.
This is also a variance that he doesn't need until the end of the year. He's not going to build till
Yeah.
next year. So, you know, I think I might even just push it back to the third Wednesday in June if everybody will be there. I'd rather have everybody here if the applicant is willing to do that.
I don't think I'm going to be anywhere in June, maybe away in July.
Okay, wait a minute.
Great, so let's move from that. Well, we're talking about,
June meeting stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, instead of April or May or July.
we're
Yeah,
talking about, well, next month is April, so we're talking about the third week in May.
yeah, I'll be going, but I'm an alternate, so.
Third week in May,
Yeah, Wednesday.
Where you going?
as you were saying, June.
Yeah, you did say.
You did say
I just
that.
go. But I have to make sure the applicant is okay with that, because I have the application and
Yeah.
normally we'd have to do it within, you know, at the next meeting.
30 days, yeah.
Okay, any other business?
Well, and the next meeting then would be in April.
The next,
Pending
In June.
notification.
If he said no.
If he said no, the next meeting would be April. If he is agreeable, and I suspect he would be, the next meeting would be in May. Give ourselves a month off. See, Joan, you can't get us good.
We need Joan.
Okay, I will write up my summary of the decision and then circulate to everybody to see if anybody wants to make any changes. And if there are changes you think are necessary, why don't you email it back? And then once we're finished with that, I will
You find it
provide the
yet?
decision
No, I don't
to
have all
Look
the
at
maps.
Malone Road.
I
Robert
don't have
and
them on here.
the town offices.
Okay.
They gotta all be online soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
Well, we're going through it, yeah, it's a good process, so thank you for that.
well, we
Gotta
have it.
protect everyone.